Hey everyone, hope everyone's having a good night. My name is Shin. I am a customer success manager over at Amplitude. And tonight we are extremely lucky to have someone from Square's growth team to come and talk to us. So without further ado, here's Ann.
Hi, so my name is Ann Young. I work on the data warehouse team at Square with a primary focus on Square Register. I have been at Square for about 2 years. Before Square, I worked as a data analyst at a mix of companies, investment banking, display advertising, and social games.
Great. So what made you really want to join Square? Was there anything special about the company?
So there's a lot of reasons to join Square. We're hiring also. So for me personally, I was really looking to work at a company where it would make a huge social impact, right? So I've worked in companies before focused on social games and advertising, and I really wanted to look for something different. So the mission at Square is that we want to make it easy for anyone to start accepting card payments. We want to make it really easy for anyone to be able to start a business, run their business, and then grow their business. And then I guess for like a more cheesier answer, like what about the data at Square that's interesting? I would say Square collects a really niche set of data about business, about how business in the U.S. and across the world are doing, right? So like one day we kind of hope to build a series of like either economic or business indicators where we can like help advise new businesses on where they should start their business, like what industry is profitable, and also advise our merchants on how should they price their goods and services. So that future is pretty awesome, I think.
Great. That's great to know. So now let's dive directly into, I guess, your day-to-day operations. For the company, what is your main focus on in the short term?
Okay, so I can kind of touch on this topic. We have 3 priorities this year. Priority number 1 is to grow our business. The past 6 months has been a really disruptive time for payments. In the US, we started rolling out EMV chip cards. And then there's also very rising popularity and acceptance on Apple Pay and Android Pay. And so we think this is the year where Square really gets to kind of like stand out above the other competitors and say this is your premier go-to payment solution and business solution. We are like a complete business platform. And so I think this is the year where we differentiate ourselves from like other companies. Priority number 2 is we want to increase the number of add-on services to our core payments business. So we're releasing a lot of new features around like Square Payroll and Square Capital and Square Appointments, like a lot of new products to kind of enhance your business operations. And then priority number 3 is we want to continue to focus on risk management. Every dollar we lose on risk comes straight from our bottom line. So we want to continue to be very strict on managing our risk and exposure, especially when we launch new payment products.
Great. So having a structured framework for growth is extremely important to a company. How did you guys at Square decide what metrics you were going to track and how are you going to track them?
At Square, we have a couple KPIs. One of them is the number of active sellers, so active sellers in the past month and the past year. I think one thing to kind of point out about Square that's different than like most companies is that Square is primarily a business-to-business product. Convincing somebody to switch your payments processing platform to Square, it's kind of hard, right? There's a lot of friction in convincing a business to switch your platform, right? Versus like asking somebody to download an app. So our other key metric is actually the attach rates on our add-on services. So attach rate being like how many of our addressable like active seller market is using these add-on services and how many add-on services are they using.
So in terms of how you're collecting that data, what tools are you using to get that?
At the executive level and the PM level, we produce a lot of Tableau dashboards. I guess not a lot, but for every product, we kind of have like a special Tableau dashboard for that product that kind of shows how many daily active users, how many new signups, what's the retention rate like. We also have daily email reports that go out to PMs and execs, and that's a homegrown, sorry, I keep moving my mic, and that's a homegrown email tool that we use. And then on the day-to-day level, almost all of our PMs use Amplitude, and that's why I'm here.
Right. So I guess the cat's out of the bag. Yes, Square does use Amplitude. And as a quick follow-up question then, what kind of data are you actually pulling from Amplitude?
I think for a lot of our PMs at Square, it's hard for us to get into the heads of a business owner, right? Like not many of us have started our own business before. So when you're designing a feature for something like Square Payroll, like we really want to understand what are the current pain points with managing like a payroll system, right? And I think the top like most used feature of Amplitude that we use is the user activity stream. Because like when we roll out a new feature, we want to see like what are these like business owners doing on like either the app or the website. It really kind of helps us get into their heads and understand like how are they navigating this product. It's like what sort of questions do they have?
Great, great. So I guess understanding these bigger customers and making sure that they're driving value from Square. Mm-hmm. Great. So we've kind of heard, from a lot of different places that retention is a really important metric. You can look at anyone with an orange shirt to read exactly what I'm talking about. But how important is retention to Square and to your growth?
So if any of you guys read Square's latest earnings report, I think we cited this fact that like almost 40% of our processing volume and almost revenue comes from the segment of users that we call large sellers. So this group of large sellers is really important to our business, and retaining them is really important to our business. We actually have a dedicated sales team. I think it's around 8 salespeople, account managers actually, whose job it is to kind of like keep track of our top sellers, right? And then our business data science team also built this churn model that kind of like predicts the likelihood of any of these sellers and their likelihood to churn. And then we have this other like email app that will like email our account managers a priority list of these are people to call, these are people to watch out for. And we also have like information like this is the best time of hour to call them because like this is when we think, this is the past times where somebody took the phone call. So retaining this like segment of large sellers is like really important to us.
Yeah, so maintaining and understanding and projecting where your largest customer base is going to be in the next year helps you out tremendously. Mm-hmm. Great. So before we turn it over to the QA, I do have one last question. What advice would you have for other people that are looking to grow their organizations?
I think Square is in this hyper growth phase where we're building out a lot of different products, a lot of different features, and sometimes we're just like launching them to see kind of like what sticks, like what are people interested in, what are people willing to pay for. And then when you're moving so quickly as a company, sometimes it's really hard to lose your focus, right? How to keep everybody on track on what the long-term strategy is. So something we've adopted is OKRs. OKR stands for Objectives and Key Results. So objectives is kind of like a broad statement about like what you or your org wants to achieve this quarter. Key results are typically a very measurable goal, like something as simple as like I promise to like run 3 SQL training sessions this quarter, or we want to run at least 100 experiments across a company. Having these OKRs kind of keeps the company on track and makes everybody aware of what are the key objectives for a company, and then also holds like each person has an OKR too, and holds each person accountable to see if they hit that goal for that quarter.
Yeah. So having structure, focus, and buy-in from the rest of the company. Great. At this point, we'd like to open up for Q&A, so if anyone has any questions, I think Aditya will run around with a mic.
And what's your OKR for this quarter?
My OKR is Square has a combination of data. So we use a combination of kind of transactional data like payments and dimensional data like users and payment cards. We also have a set of data that's like event tracking data, right? The event tracking data is what we use Amplitude to log. When it comes to that transactional set of data, Square actually has like over 500 transactional tables. And then, so I run this team called Data Warehouse, where we make this very large table on all the user attributes or all the payment card attributes, and then we have like very structured way of how we log payments. So my OKR this quarter was to make sure that that table is updated daily. We're at that phase of the company, right? So like, At Square, I think we didn't really put a lot of investment into data until roughly 3 years ago. So we're still the company is 7 years old, but our data maturity is actually still pretty young.
I'm interested by your journey at Square because I know that you've obviously expanded to different markets, and what like one individual might think are similar markets like the US and Canada actually end up being very dissimilar. And for example, like you're also in Japan, but I feel like that might actually be more similar. So how do you use data before you launch and while you launch in order to justify how your experiments will run and when they will end in new markets?
That's a really good question. I guess I kind of have to say we are heavily focused on the US. As you know, like Japan is more of a cash economy. Canada and US are pretty similar, but then I think our penetration in the US is much higher. We have different teams. I guess I'll talk a little bit about our analytics org. So within analytics org, we have product analytics, business analytics, and marketing analytics. And then within business analytics, we actually have a couple of people focused on different countries. So we have one person focused on Canada analytics, one person focused on Japan analytics. Experiment-wise, we focus pretty heavily on the US currently.
Hi. So I work on an app that is for business users. And we have found it challenging to do A/B testing on an enterprise type of product because you're changing the workflows that people have built their companies around. How does Square deal with A/B testing for when their audience is merchants? Do you do A/B testing? Maybe I should start
Okay,
there.
sure. So we do A/B testing. And this is a pretty controversial topic, right? Like, how do you do A/B testing on enterprises? We do A/B testing.
Do you do it on your enterprise users?
We do. So I guess
It's pretty taboo at our company as well.
I think what happens usually is we test the different pricing rates that we offer to companies. So the standard rate that you get on the website is 2.75% per payment, but you can apply for lower rates. I think anytime we do testing, we offer a lower rates to people in the test group, but it's usually a very small sample size in the beginning.
So you don't test any like behavioral, like feature sets in the product?
Not in a really meaningful way. So we test like, should we show this pop-up notification or not? Should we change the UI or not? Should we change the sign-up flow, the in-app sign-up flow? But in terms of features, we do gradual rollouts. So we have a group of beta merchants, like around, I think, 5,000 beta merchants that we'll first roll out the features to. And then when we do launch a new in-app feature, we'll roll it out to 10% of the audience first, and then 50%, and then 100%. But it's usually at that point, we're definitely going to roll it out to everybody.
Yeah, we do that too.
So you mentioned earlier that you guys have certain high-value customers and other customers who don't make you as much money. So how does that affect what you're measuring? Like, do your retention numbers, are they weighted by how much money a customer makes you guys? How do you actually take that into account?
So across the company, we set up standard definitions in what the user segments are. So we have a definition for micro merchants, small and mid-sized businesses, and then large businesses. And so the cutoffs, I know for large businesses, the cutoff is like, we estimate they have $250,000 in revenue. Like that's the cutoff for a large seller segment. So across the company, we kind of enforce these standard definitions when looking at product usage or looking at either like, revenue sort of numbers. Was there? I forgot. What was the second part of the question? The second part of the question was just how does it affect your metrics? Oh, okay. So I guess I would say like most of our metrics we cut by these three segments: micro, small and mid-sized business, and large sellers. The reason why we segment by these groups is because we kind of accept the fact that micro merchants are more likely or most likely not going to sign up for like add-on software products. They're not gonna sign up for Square Payroll. They're not gonna sign up for Square Appointments. Whereas large sellers to like run their operations, they are likely to use these other enterprise products.
Okay, great. So I think that wraps up the Q&A. Anne, I wanted to thank you again for coming on to the panel here and talking to us. We will be taking a 5-minute break, and we'll be back shortly with the retention panel. Thank you, everyone.